Hello and welcome back to my shop. My name is George and I'm coming to you from Chelsea, Quebec. This is my video for August 2016 and the topic is chainsaw milling. So milling your own lumber using a chainsaw. And the specific theme of today's video is what's the minimum that you need in order to get the job done. Now, let me tell you who I have in mind as an audience here. I'm not thinking of anyone who wants to get started milling their own lumber as a source of income. I'm thinking instead of the hobbyist woodworker who ends up having to harvest or wanting to harvest some lumber really as an accident. So for example, a neighbor comes by, he knows that you're a woodworker, and he tells you that his elm has to come down, there's a city ordinance, and he's wondering whether you can use the lumber. And you're thinking to yourself, what a shame. Of course I could use that lumber, but I don't have a means of harvesting it. So the question that I'm going to be addressing in this video is, what are the minimum requirements that you need to get that occasional once in a lifetime or maybe one log per year lumber harvested? Now, I used to think that this was the minimum requirement for harvesting your own lumber. So I've got a gasoline powered chainsaw over here and an Alaskan mill. In Canadian, you're looking at about $1,000 worth of equipment if you were to buy it new, maybe $700 or $800 American. But if that's the only time you're going to use the chainsaw, you're never going to see any kind of a return on that investment. You're probably not going to harvest $1,000 worth of walnut from that one tree. So, is there a cheaper way of going about this? Here's an electric chainsaw that I've had in the house for a good 20 years, maybe more. I don't remember where I bought it. Odds are pretty good it was Canadian Tire. It's an electric chainsaw, and of course if you're going to be harvesting lumber in the woods, you'll need a gasoline powered machine. No question about that. But the scenario that I've painted so far is a neighbor's tree close to his or her house, and you're going to be harvesting the lumber probably back at your place in your own backyard, both places close to electrical outlets that you can use. So maybe an electric chainsaw is good enough, and you can pick those up for about $200 or less. I don't remember how much this one cost. It's branded Concept, and I can't even find that brand on the web anymore. Probably it's a generic rebranding of some regular chainsaw. If you recognize the shape, maybe you can tell me what it is in the comments. It's a small one. It's got a 16-inch chain on it, and I've attached to it a hunk of wood with a bit of an offset that serves as the mill. So we're looking at something that, first of all, is not going to cost that much if you're buying a new electric chainsaw. But more likely, you can just use the chainsaw that you already have for some of those small cleanup jobs in your backyard. So here are the two guides that I use in place of an Alaskan mill. To make the first cut, I use a guide that has a fairly deep clearance to it. So this one measures 3 inches. So when this is mounted on the bar is held 3 inches away from this flat surface. And the flat surface is then used to ride along a board that I've positioned on the log to make the first cut. So this is just a piece of scrap wood from the shop. The real board is construction lumber, a 2x6 that runs about 8 feet in length. Then when I want to start taking slabs, 3 inches is too large a space for me, so I switched to a mill with a shallow depth. So this one measures 1.5 inches of clearance. As you can see, it's a different shape. It's made from Baltic birch, 2 pieces of Baltic birch glued together. I put a handle on the top to help push the thing along, and I've also constructed it with a long leading edge, and what this does is it helps balance the saw on top of the wood, especially when I'm first starting the cut. So to make the first cut, I have a board screwed on top of the log with a 3-inch clearance using this mill. The board is screwed into the log using 2.5-inch screws. So it's important not to make those screws too long. A few things that you can do to help out is when you choose your screws so that they're 1/2 inch shorter than the clearance of your board. Don't drive them in too deeply. Have them just clear the surface and that's all. And also, if you can, drive them in at an angle. That will help with the stability and also effectively makes them shorter so that your chain doesn't run into the screws as you're moving along. Once the first cut is made with the deep mill, the board and the first section can be removed. Then I swap to my shallow board, and then I use the surface of the log as the guide for moving the chain along. And I showed that backwards, but you get the idea. Okay, now if you're interested in trying this out, be sure to watch the entire video, because towards the end I'm going to have a couple of cautions, warnings, some snags that I ran into, and it's important to be aware of those. So what do you say we go do a couple of logs? Meet me out back. I'm going to operate the saw using the dead man safety feature at the beginning until the blade is completely buried in the cut. And then I'm going to switch to using the clamp to keep the saw on. Now that the blade is completely buried in the cut, I'm going to switch to using the clamp to keep the power on for the rest of the cut. When I get close to the end, I'm going to remove the clamp and go back to holding it by hand so that I can release the power as soon as the blade is out of the cut. . 。 . 。 . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . So here are two cautionary notes that are important to express. The first one is that something funny would happen on several occasions, not always, but more often than to think of it as just a fluke. It would happen when I got towards the bottom of a log. So in instances where I had one more slab that I could have taken cleanly, I would make my way through about a foot or so into the log, and then the chainsaw bar would start to take on a bow, and it would not be easy to move. It would get very, very difficult to move, and I just couldn't move it any further. I had to back it off. It happened on about 3 out of maybe 7 instances. So often enough to think that something systematic is going on. So should you try to take the last slab? Here's why you might want to forego it. First of all, until I understand what this process is that's doing that, I don't have a cure for it. So I would say, don't take the last slab. The last slab would be narrow anyway. Why not instead take the remaining hunk to your bandsaw and then just get some 4/4 material out of it. So you'll get a nice thick 4/4 hunk from the final slab. That's what I'm going to do. I've got about half a dozen waiting for me out there, and I'll get some leg material out of them. The second thing that I really need to tell you is that I'm not sure that your electric saw will survive this operation. My own saw, after 20 years of service, is starting to show a little bit of signs of wear. I did buy a second and a third electric chainsaw. The second one turned out to be a dud. Its motor started sparking right away, so I don't think, and I wasn't stressing it that hard, so I think I just happened to get a bum motor. Did I ask for my money back or a replacement? Well, I asked for my money back because I wasn't sure that the next motor from that manufacturer would be any better. So I don't think that saw went down because of stress. I think there was something fundamentally wrong with its motor. It started sparking right away. It was on Canada Day, so I enjoyed the fireworks anyway, but in a very short time its motor just burnt out like that. The other saw was more promising, but I ended up hitting a nail. And so I wrecked the chain, and I think I did some internal damage to a gear that was supposed to disintegrate anyway if the saw was overly stressed. So that one is still to be replaced. So I have nothing either very good or very bad to say about that saw yet. The first one whose motor burnt out was a Greenworks from, so not Works, not the orange one, but Greenworks, a green and black one from Canadian Tire. That was the one whose motor burnt out within the first 5 minutes of use. So those are the two main cautions. Watch out for that last slab. And will your electric saw survive sawmilling? Maybe not. I don't know. My own is still working. It is showing signs of wear, but it's still sounding sound. But in the end, the way I look at it is I've got about between $1,000 and $2,000 worth of wood that I harvested, and the saw itself, to replace it, would cost about $200. So from that perspective, I'm ahead of the game. I hope you are getting ahead of your game as well. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Find your passion and share it.